On August 17, Internment at Eagle Farm Airfield near Brisbane, Australia. Captain Paul Pappy Gunn watched mechanics weld 4 50 caliber machine guns into the nose of a Douglas A-20 Havoc bomber. He was 43 years old, with 21 years of military service behind him. His wife, Clara Louise, and their 4 children were trapped in Santo Tomas internment camp in Manila. Prisoners of the Japanese since January 1942. The 5th Air Force was bleeding aircraft. In July alone, the 3rd Attack Group had lost 11 A-22s attempting to bomb Japanese convoys from high altitude. The bombardiers couldn't hit moving ships. When bombers dropped lower for accuracy, Japanese deck gunners shredded them. Captain Ed Larner had watched 3 of his crews burn into the Coral Sea the week before. The Japanese were reinforcing New Guinea unopposed, their convoys sailing freely across the Bismarck Sea. Something had to change. Gunn had an idea that seemed crazy but made perfect sense. If bombers flew low enough to skip bombs across the water like flat stones, they could hit ships at point-blank range. But first, they needed to survive the approach. That meant overwhelming enemy deck guns with massive forward firepower before the gunners could react. The A-20 Havoc's standard armament was pathetic. 4 30 caliber machine guns that bounced off ship armor. Gunn needed 50 caliber guns. 4 of them, firing straight ahead at 700 rounds per minute combined. He was using guns stripped from wrecked P-39 and P-40 fighters. The pilots were dead. The guns weren't. General George Kenney, the new 5th Air Force commander, gave Gunn 1 week to prove it worked. The first test flight nearly killed the pilot. Each gun weighed 64 pounds. With ammunition, the nose weight shifted the center of gravity dangerously forward. The A-20 barely climbed and wanted to nose over. Gunn spent 2 days rebalancing the aircraft, moving equipment aft and adjusting tail trim. The second test pilot reported the plane flew like it was angry. But it flew. On September 12, Internment. 16 modified A-22s hit the Japanese airfield at Buna, coming in at treetop level with guns hammering. They destroyed 14 enemy aircraft on the ground and suppressed every anti-aircraft position. 08 Segundo lost. Kenney wanted more. But the A-20 had limitations. Its range was too short to reach Japanese bases across the Owen Stanley Mountains. Its bomb load was too light. Gunn needed a bigger platform, the B-25, Mitchell. Longer range, heavier payload, more space for guns. In December 1942, Gunn and Jack Fox from North American Aviation pulled the bombardier section from a B-25C and installed 8 forward-firing 50 caliber guns, 4 in the nose, 4 in external cheek packs on the fuselage. They rotated the top turret forward, 10 guns firing ahead. Then they added more on each side, 14 guns total, throwing 215 pounds of lead per second. The ground crew called it Pappy's Folly. Gunn flew the prototype to Charters Towers to demonstrate it. The plane was nose-heavy. Wanting to drop out of the sky on takeoff, he had to use full back pressure just to keep it level. But once airborne, the B-25 strafer was devastating. Kenney ordered 12 more conversions immediately. By February 1943, they had 30 strafers ready for combat. Then Kenney sent the blueprints to Wright Field in Ohio. Army Air Force engineers studied the modifications for 3 days and sent back a message. The modifications were impractical. The balance would be wrong. The airplane would be too heavy. It wouldn't fly properly. They recommended grounding every modified B-25 immediately. Kenny was in Washington when the message arrived. He walked into General Hap Arnold's office, where the right field engineers were waiting to explain why Pappy Gunn's gunship was impossible. Kenny told them 12 of these impossible airplanes had just destroyed a Japanese convoy in the Bismarck Sea. Every transport sunk. 60 more strafers were already being modified in Australia. Arnold practically ran the engineers out of his office. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea. The battle started with intelligence intercepts on February 28. Iten Jobai Sishisan. Allied codebreakers in Melbourne decrypted Japanese naval messages. A convoy was leaving Rabaul. 8 transport ships. 8 destroyer escorts. Nearly 7,000 Japanese troops bound for Lae on New Guinea's north coast. General Kenny had 72 hours to stop them. The convoy route crossed the Bismarck Sea between New Britain and New Guinea. 400 miles of open water. Japanese commanders believed bad weather would shield them. March was monsoon season with low clouds, heavy rain, and poor visibility. Allied bombers couldn't hit what they couldn't see. They were right about the weather. They were wrong about the bombers. On March 2, reconnaissance aircraft spotted the convoy steaming south through the Vitiaz Strait. B-17 flying fortresses attacked from 15,000 feet through cloud breaks. They dropped 137 bombs and claimed multiple hits. Post-battle analysis showed they sank nothing. High-altitude bombing against moving ships didn't work. The Japanese convoy kept coming. Captain Ed Larner briefed the 90th Bomb Squadron at Port Moresby on the evening of March 2. 12 B-25 strafers. 30 modified, A-20 Havocs. Royal Australian Air Force Beaufighters for top cover. P-38 Lightnings to handle Japanese Zeros. The strafers would attack at masthead height. 50 feet above the water. Gun range. Point blank. The plan was simple. Overwhelm the deck guns with concentrated firepower. Skip bomb the ships while they're stunned. Get out before the Zeros arrive. Larner had flown one practice mission using this tactic. At 0630 on March 3. The strike force assembled over Cape Ward Hunt. 137 aircraft total. B-17 seconds would attack first from altitude to draw defensive fire high. Then the strafers would come in low. The Japanese convoy was 70 miles northwest of Lae when the B-17 seconds arrived. The transports opened fire with every gun. One B-17 took flak damage and turned back. The rest pressed the attack. Then the strafers arrived. Larner led the B 25 seconds in from the southeast at wave-top height. 14 forward-firing guns per aircraft. 168 guns total across 12 strafers. They came in line abreast. A wall of firepower 300 yards wide. The Japanese crews on the transport, Kyokusei Maru, saw them at 2 miles. The captain ordered hard to starboard. Too late. The B-25 seconds opened fire at 800 yards. The 50 caliber rounds walked across the water like a chainsaw. They hit the ship's superstructure, shredded the bridge, killed the anti-aircraft crews before they could traverse their guns. 3 B-25 seconds dropped bombs at 100 yards. The first bomb skipped off the water, hit the hull below the waterline, detonated inside the engine room. The second bomb hit amidships. The third missed. Kyokusei Maru was dead in the water 30 seconds after the strafers arrived. Burning and listing to port, the ship sank in 40 minutes. The transport Teo Maru tried to run. The captain pushed engines to full speed, 15 knots maximum. The B-25 strafers were doing 240 knots. 4 strafers bracketed Teo Maru from both sides. The 50 caliber streams converged on the deck. Anti-aircraft crews died at their guns. The bridge windows shattered. The ship's executive officer took 3 rounds through the chest. The captain lasted 10 more seconds. The strafers dropped 8 bombs. 5 hit. The ship broke in half. Japanese soldiers below decks never made it topside. The transport sank in 6 minutes. Survivors jumped into the Bismarck Sea, wearing full combat gear. The packs dragged them under. Australian bowfighters strafed the destroyer Shikanami as it tried to screen the transports. When B-25 strafers arrived, Shikanami had no defense. 3 strafers attacked from different angles. Bombs hit port side, starboard side, amidships. The destroyer didn't sink immediately but was finished. The crew abandoned ship 2 hours later. By 0900 on March 3, the Japanese convoy was scattered across 40 square miles of ocean. 5 transports, sinking or burning. 2 destroyers, crippled. The remaining ships tried to make lay. They didn't make it. The strafers returned at 1,400. Fresh bombs. Full ammunition loads. The Japanese had no fighter cover. The Zeros had landed at Leh to refuel and were on the ground when the second wave arrived. The transport Nojima Maru took 12 bomb hits in the second attack. The ship's magazine detonated. The explosion was visible from Port Moresby, 130 miles away. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left. No wreckage. No survivors. 800 Japanese soldiers gone in 3 seconds. Captain Larner's strafer came in low over the transport Oigawa Maru. His co-pilot counted 14 fires on the deck. Japanese soldiers were jumping overboard. The anti-aircraft guns were silent. Larner's bombardier released at point-blank range. 2 bombs. Both hit. The transport settled by the stern and capsized. Modified, A-20 Havocs hunted the crippled destroyers. The destroyer Asashio tried to rescue survivors from the water. 3 A-20 seconds attacked from different directions. The crew was focused on rescue operations and never saw the strafers until the guns opened fire. Asashio took bomb hits on the forward deck and bridge. The destroyer burned through the night and sank at dawn on March 4. By evening of March 3, the entire Japanese convoy was destroyed. 8 transports sunk. 4 destroyers sunk. Of nearly 7,000 Japanese troops that left Rabaul, fewer than 200 reached Leh. About 700 were rescued and returned to Rabaul. The rest died in the Bismarck Sea. Allied losses: 4 aircraft, 13 aircrew killed. General MacArthur called it one of the most complete and annihilating combats of all time. The Japanese never again attempted to reinforce New Guinea by convoy. The war in the Southwest Pacific had turned. And it turned because of Paul Gunn's impossible gunship. To California, back in Australia. Wrightfield engineers were drafting their formal report explaining why the B-25 modifications couldn't possibly work. Kenny sent a message to General Hap Arnold on March 5. Subject line: Commerce Destroyer Modifications Approved for Production. Body: 12 B-25 strafers had just destroyed an entire Japanese convoy. Request immediate factory integration of forward gun package into all B-25 production aircraft. Arnold called North American Aviation's president that afternoon. He was sending the man who designed them. Paul Gunn was going to California. Gunn didn't want to leave Australia. His wife Polly and their 4 children were still in Santo Tomas internment camp in Manila. The Japanese had held them since January 19,421, 4 months. Gunn flew every mission hoping he'd get closer to liberating the Philippines. Going to California meant going in the wrong direction. Kenny made it an order. The 5th Air Force needed factory-built strafers. Hundreds of them. Gunn was the only man who could show North American aviation how to do it right. The general promised Gunn would be back in the Pacific within 6 weeks. Gunn landed in Long Beach, California, on March 27. The North American aviation plant covered 140 acres with 20,000 workers on 3 shifts. The assembly line produced 1 B-25 every 4 hours. Factory engineers studied Gunn's hand-drawn blueprints. They asked about stress calculations. Gunn said he didn't have any. They asked about wind tunnel testing. Gunn said he'd tested it by flying. They asked about the center of gravity problem. Gunn showed them where he'd moved radio equipment aft to compensate. One engineer said the modifications would buckle the fuselage skin around the cheek gun mounts. The muzzle blast from 50 caliber guns would peel the aluminum. Gunn said it did. Then he showed them the blast tubes he'd welded to extend beyond the propeller arc. Problem solved. The factory engineers spent 2 weeks reverse engineering Gunn's field modifications into production drawings. They strengthened the nose structure, redesigned gun mounts, added heavier gauge aluminum patches to reinforce fuselage skin. They calculated the exact center of gravity shift and adjusted tail trim accordingly. The first factory-built B-25G strafer rolled off the assembly line on May 10. 4 50 caliber guns in the solid nose, plus a 75mm M4 cannon in the forward fuselage. The cannon used the same ammunition as the M3 Lee tank. One shell could hole a destroyer below the waterline. Gun Test flew the prototype. The 75mm cannon recoiled 4 feet when fired. The entire aircraft shuddered. The navigator had to manually reload the cannon between shots. Rate of fire: 1 round every 30 seconds. North American Aviation built 400 B-25G strafers. Then they improved the design. The B-25H added 4 more 50 caliber guns in cheek packs. 8 guns in the nose, 4 in the cheeks. 2 in the top turret rotated forward. 14 forward-firing guns total. The H model kept the 75mm cannon but added a better recoil system. Rate of fire increased to 1 round every 20 seconds. The B-25J removed the 75mm cannon and added 4 more 50 caliber guns. 18 forward-firing guns. The most heavily armed production bomber in history. North American Aviation built 900 B-25Js. Gunn returned to Australia in May. Exactly 6 weeks later, his family was still in Manila. The strafers keep hunting. In April 1943, B-25 destroyed 16 Japanese barges near Finschhafen. In May, they sank 12 cargo ships at WWII Harbor. In June, they hit oil facilities at Balikpapan on Borneo. The Japanese stopped moving supplies by ship in daylight. It didn't help. The strafers learned to attack at night using radar. They learned to skip bomb from 50 feet in complete darkness. They learned to coordinate with PT boats that illuminated targets with searchlights at the last second. The Japanese called the modified B-25 seconds the Black Death. On November 2, Major Paul Gunn led 4 squadrons of strafers into Rabaul Harbor. 137 Allied aircraft total. 59 B-25 seconds. The harbor held 38 Japanese vessels, cruisers, destroyers, tankers, cargo ships, minesweepers, The strafers came in at masthead height through phosphorus smoke that blinded anti-aircraft gunners. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. The Japanese couldn't track them all. In 15 minutes, 30 ships were hit. 5 sunk outright. 12 damaged beyond repair. Rabaul Harbor was finished as a forward supply base. Gunn flew that mission. He was 44 years old. He didn't have to fly combat, he was a special projects officer on headquarters staff. But his family was still in Manila, and every mission took him closer. Intelligence reports from Santo Tomas were getting worse. Food rations cut, medicine running out. Prisoners dying from malnutrition and disease. The Japanese camp commander had informed the Red Cross that all prisoners would be executed if Allied forces approached Manila. Gunn told Kenny he wanted to fly the first mission over Manila when liberation came. Kenny promised he could. The strafers evolved through 1,944. Some carried 8 5-inch high-velocity rockets under the wings. Some carried napalm tanks. Some carried parafrag bombs, small fragmentation bombs with parachutes that allowed the B-25 to drop them from minimum altitude without catching itself in the blast. The most effective tactic was the combined strike. High-level B-24 Liberators would bomb from 20,000 feet to force defenders to look up. Then strafers would come in low. By the time gunners looked down, the B-25 seconds were already on them. In the first 8 months of 1944, 5th Air Force strafers destroyed 947 Japanese aircraft on the ground. They sank 273 ships. They killed an estimated 38,000 Japanese soldiers. Gunn added his own modifications as the war progressed. He mounted additional fuel tanks to extend range. He improved gun cooling systems. He developed new ammunition loading techniques that increased rate of fire. Some B-25 seconds in the Pacific carried modifications that existed nowhere else because Gunn had invented them the night before a mission. Other theater commanders wanted strafers. Kenny sent blueprints. The Mediterranean theater modified B-25 seconds for anti-shipping missions against German convoys. The China-Burma-India theater modified B-25 seconds to attack Japanese supply lines along the Burma Road. The concept gun proved in Brisbane spread across every combat zone. Reunion. On October 20, Internment. American forces landed at Leyte in the Philippines. The liberation of Manila was 3 months away. Gunn's family had been in captivity for nearly 3 years. He was flying multiple missions every day. He told his crew chief he wouldn't stop until his family was free. Then the Japanese bombed Tacloban airfield on November 27. Internment at 0330 hours. 56 aircraft, Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, escorted by 0 fighters. They came in low from the north. Radar operators saw them too late. Gunn was in the operations tent reviewing mission plans when the first bombs hit. The tent was 200 yards from the main runway. Too close. The blast wave knocked him off his feet. Shrapnel tore through canvas walls. A fragment hit Gunn in the left leg. Another hit his shoulder. The medical officer found him trying to stand. Blood soaking through his flight suit. Gunn said he needed to check on his aircraft. The doctor said he needed surgery. Gunn made it 30 feet before he collapsed. They evacuated him to the hospital at Leyte. The leg wound was serious. The shrapnel had severed an artery. The surgeon said Gunn wouldn't fly again for 6 months minimum, probably longer. The injuries qualified him for medical retirement. 45 years old. 26 years of service between Navy and Army. He'd earned the right to go home. Gunn told the surgeon he wasn't going anywhere until his family was free. The Battle of Manila started on February 3. Internment. American forces fought house to house through the city. The Japanese had declared Manila a fortress. They would defend every street. The fighting was brutal. Building by building. Block by block. Santo Tomas internment camp was liberated on February 3. San. 200 Allied prisoners freed. Gunn's wife Polly weighed 89 pounds. His daughter Julia weighed 63. They'd been eating rice and vegetable soup once a day for the past year. His son Nathaniel had malaria. His youngest daughter had dysentery. But they were alive. Gunn flew to Manila on February 4 against medical orders. His leg was still bandaged. He was using a cane. The doctor had cleared him for light duty only. No combat, flying. Gunn went to Santo Tomas instead. He found his family in the makeshift hospital the Army had set up. Polly didn't recognize him at first. He'd lost 40 pounds since she'd last seen him in April 1942, 3 years. He was completely gray. She thought he was a doctor. Then he said her name. And she knew. The reunion lasted 4 hours. Then Gunn returned to Leyte. His medical leave wasn't over. But the war wasn't either. The modified B-25 seconds kept flying. Other pilots. Other crews. But Gunn's modifications. By war's end, North American Aviation had built 9 600 B-25 Mitchell bombers. Nearly 5. 000 were strafer variants with forward gun packages based on Gunn's original design. Those strafers sank over 800 Japanese ships in the Pacific. They destroyed over 2,000 Japanese aircraft on the ground. They killed an estimated 85 Japanese soldiers. The commerce destroyer concept that engineers called impossible had become the most effective anti-shipping weapon in the theater. After the war, Gunn never flew combat again. The leg wound ended his operational career. The Army retired him as a full colonel on June 30. Medical disability. He was 48 years old. He went back to the Philippines and rebuilt Philippine Airlines, the company he'd started before the war. PAL resumed operations in 1946. Gunn started with 3 war-surplus C-47 transport aircraft, flying routes between Manila, Cebu, Davao, and other Philippine cities. The airline he'd built with 5 Beechcraft planes before the war now operated across the entire archipelago. The Philippine government awarded him the Distinguished Service Star in 1947. President Manuel Roxas presented the medal personally. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism and exceptional service to the Republic of the Philippines during the Liberation Campaign." Colonel Gunn's innovative modifications to Allied aircraft directly contributed to the defeat of Japanese forces and the freedom of the Filipino people. The United States military had already decorated him, Distinguished Flying Cross with Oak Leaf Cluster, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Air Medal, 9 Purple Hearts. The Distinguished Service Cross was recommended but never approved. Some officers believed Gunn's contributions were technical rather than tactical. They were wrong. General Kenny wrote in his memoir, "Pappy Gunn was the most valuable man in the 5th Air Force. His mechanical genius and combat innovations changed the course of the war in the Southwest Pacific. Without his strafer modifications, the Battle of the Bismarck Sea would have been a Japanese victory. Without Bismarck Sea, we would have lost New Guinea. Without New Guinea, the road to the Philippines would have been impossible." MacArthur agreed. In a classified letter to the War Department, dated July 1945. MacArthur recommended Gunn for promotion to brigadier general. The recommendation was denied. The Army Air Force was reducing force structure. Promotions were frozen. Gunn remained a colonel. He never complained. He'd gotten what he fought for. His family was free. The Philippines were liberated. The Japanese were defeated. That was enough. Philippine Airlines expanded through the late 1942nd and early 1952nd. Gunn acquired DC-3 aircraft, then DC Veersekunda, then Convair 342nd. The airline established routes to Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore. By 1956, PAL was flying to San Francisco. Gunn's small inter-island airline had become an international carrier. He flew constantly, Manila to Cebu, Cebu to Davao, Davao to Hong Kong. He couldn't stop. The war had taught him that movement meant survival. Standing still meant death. Some of his pilots said Gunn was still fighting, still outrunning something. Maybe the memory of Santo Tomas. Maybe the faces of men who'd flown his modified aircraft and never came back. On October 10, WWII, Gunn chartered a Beechcraft Model 18 twin-engine plane. He was flying from Manila to Baguio, a routine trip of 140 miles north. Weather forecast showed scattered thunderstorms over the Cordillera Mountains. Nothing severe. He filed his flight plan at 0800. Departure, time 0930. Expected arrival, 1100. The tower cleared him for takeoff at 0928. The weather deteriorated faster than forecast. By 10:30, the Cordillera Mountains were socked in. Heavy rain, low visibility, turbulence. The Beechcraft's radio went silent at 1047. Search and rescue teams found the wreckage 3 days later on a mountainside near Baguio. The aircraft had flown into a storm cell. The pilots tried to climb above it. The winds drove them into the ridge. Impact killed everyone instantly. Paul Irvin Pappy Gunn died on October 11. WWII. He was 57 years old. 58 inches, 1 week. The Philippine government gave him a state funeral. 6,000 people attended. American veterans, Philippine Airlines employees, former prisoners from Santo Tomas. General Kenny sent a wreath from the United States. The Manila Times published Gunn's obituary on October 12. The headline read, "War Hero Dies in Plane Crash." The article mentioned his distinguished flying cross, his role in the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, his liberation missions over the Philippines. But it couldn't capture what he'd actually done. The numbers told part of the story. 5,000 B-25 strafers built with his modifications. 800 Japanese ships sunk. R-000 aircraft destroyed on the ground. Bashawu. 000 enemy soldiers killed. Those were the official statistics. But the real impact was different. The strafer concept changed how air forces thought about bombers. Before Gunn, bombers dropped ordnance from altitude. After Gunn, bombers became multi-role weapons, strafing, skip bombing, close air support. The AC-130 gunship used in Vietnam was a direct descendant of Gunn's B-25 modifications. So was the A-10 Warthog. So is every modern attack aircraft with forward-firing guns. North American Aviation hired Gunn as a consulting engineer in 1948. He worked on the B-45 Tornado jet bomber. advised on gun mounting systems, designed forward-firing armament packages. The company paid him well. He gave most of the money to veteran organizations. His son Nathaniel joined the Air Force, flew B-52 seconds in Vietnam, retired as a colonel. He wrote a book about his father, titled Pappy Gunn, published in 1994. It sold 12,000 copies. Most people had never heard of Paul Gunn. The National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas displays one of Gunn's original gun mounting drawings. The paper is yellowed. The measurements are handwritten in pencil. The sketch shows 4 50 caliber guns mounted inside an A-20 nose compartment. No stress calculations. No computer modeling. Just the drawing that changed the Pacific War. The Air Force Association inducted Gunn into the Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall in 2008. The citation mentioned his innovations, his combat record, his influence on modern attack aviation. The ceremony was held in Washington. 3 of his grandchildren attended. Philippine Airlines still operates today, flying to 42 destinations across Asia, Australia, and North America. The company headquarters in Manila has a portrait of Gunn in the main lobby. Most employees don't know who he is. The engineers at Wright Field said his modifications were impossible. The balance would be wrong. The airplane would be too heavy. It wouldn't fly properly. They were wrong about all of it. Sometimes impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. Sometimes it takes a mechanic with a welding torch and a personal war to fight. Sometimes it takes a man who refuses to accept that his family is lost forever. Paul Pappy Gunn proved them all wrong. The strafers flew. The ships sank. The war turned. His family came home. And that impossible airplane he built in a Brisbane repair depot killed more Japanese ships than any other aircraft in the Pacific Theater. The engineers said it couldn't be done. Pappy Gunn did it anyway.